G'day, I'm Kate Grarock. How are you? I normally make hiking videos, but I have been lucky enough to be a participant in season 1 of Alone Australia by SBS, and so I'm doing little recaps each week. And this is episode 3. Now, it started to be a bit of a joke with, I guess, people that follow me on Instagram and Twitter and all that about, am I even on the show? Because I don't really feature at all in the first 2 episodes, and I actually started to doubt it myself. There was a moment where I was just like, oh my God, has this been like a wild joke and I'm not on the show? We start episode 3 with only 7 people remaining, and this is the coolest thing I think about the Alone experiment is you have no idea how many people are out there. You have no idea what they're getting up to or how well they're doing or how poorly they're doing. I just tried to focus on my own experience and what I was doing, but I think it's that psychological element of this show that I find the most entertaining. So we kick off with Mike. He didn't look like he had a very good sleep and he's a bit uncomfortable and doesn't really sound like he's firing on all cylinders. Then he sort of goes looking for borer holes and he's noticed a tree there and he uses his axe to sort of clip off some of the bark, and he's got these beautiful sort of grubs that he can use for fishing. We also see there, that scary moment in Alone where they, the music starts to get dark and they're talking about not injuring themselves and you're just like, oh, what's happening here? And he's using the axe at the time and then it just slips out of his hands. And he makes the perfect point there as like, now it's time to stop that activity. And I think that just captures, someone like Mike has a wealth of experience in using an axe, but you haven't eaten for 3 days. It's very cold. It's wet. You're starting to feel really fatigued. And I know I certainly felt a lot slower in the activities I was doing. I felt my brain wasn't as sharp as it normally is. And I think that's where small accidents like that can happen that wouldn't normally happen. And that's, I think, the really interesting part of Alone, because it's not just about the skills. It's also luck of the, accidents. You could slip on a log, you could slip with your axe. He has put on 19 kilos of weight and we see his nice little belly there, and he explains to us that's 30 days of food rations right there. And so that's allowed him to focus more on bringing particular items to work towards food procurement on a longer term and a longer scale. And so he's sort of got that buffer there. And that's a really cool strategy. And you've seen that a lot with the US series. And I think Gina mentioned that as well too, that she had put on a lot of weight. It was certainly something that I was interested in and wasn't sure where I sort of stood on that. I had read that putting on a heap of weight quite quickly can actually lend yourself to losing weight quite quickly too, which could also be a reason for being extracted. I certainly was heavier than I normally am, just coming off the back of COVID, lockdowns, and the shit fight of the world that it has been over the last few years. So I was definitely carrying a bit more weight. I guess I was interested in just beefing up a little bit, but I didn't want to pound on 19 kilos because that would be scary. But all power to Mike and Gina. I think my first appearance is just me talking to the crows like, wah, wah, which is a very Kate thing to be doing. It's always interesting when you're letting someone else edit a video for you, how you're going to come across. And I think one of my best friends from uni just said, oh my God, it was just like hanging out with you during uni days. It was 100% Kate. And I think that's all we can ask from an editorial team is to show us in all our all our highs, our lows, but just pure us. I think I make some point there about it being an environment that I'm just so not used to being in. Like I do a heap of time outdoors and I'm very comfortable outdoors, but certainly that sort of flooded swamp, dead trees, I found it quite hard emotionally. And then it has me harvesting some blady grass. And yeah, that was one of my staples. I just they were all around there and you just chop up a bit and get some good roughage there. And there was definitely that first bit that was really delicious and yummy, but then I was trying to take that little bit extra because I just wanted to have a bit of sort of, I guess, fibre going through my body to make sure everything kept working the way it should be working. Oh, and then we go to my flashback of my time with my partner Elsie and my daughter Juno, and there's just this beautiful little time capsule of Juno when she was 6 months old, and I think that's always going to be something really special to our families. Brought up some of those feelings of, the hard thing of leaving your family, and just so glad I don't have to do it anytime soon. I think that's the main one there. And I love that they captured that line of that I'm trying to work with the land and not to use it for my personal gain. And so that was definitely a balance I had constantly of when you live in an area, you see the direct impacts over a few days' time. And I think even with my hiking, I've never experienced that, because often you'll camp in an area 1 or 2 nights and then you'll move on. But to stay in an area for a prolonged period of time, you start to see the firewood's harder to find, the plants that you're harvesting, they get harder and harder to find, and you have to keep going further and further. And I had to be mindful also in this that I didn't want to completely destroy plants. So when I was harvesting, I'd only harvest a little portion of the plant to allow it to stay there and keep growing. And so I definitely made it harder for myself by doing that strategy. But personally, I guess that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to live with nature. I didn't want to just take. I wanted to take as much as I needed just to get by. This is obviously a softer approach than some people that are out there to, hunt animals and things like that. And all power to them, complete respect for people that hunt humanely. I just knew for me this was going to be a mental game over perhaps a physical. I mean, there's definitely a physical side of it, but for me, I had to take care of my mental health, and my ethics while I was out there was a huge part of that. Then we jump over to Chris, and he's like, first of all, he's like, morning, and just shouts. And I think that's what we love about Chris is he's just so energetic. So he's going out with his club to smash some possums. And I think, we're like, ooh, half excited for him, but also half like, ooh, what's he going to do when he finds one? And unfortunately, he doesn't have much success there. And so he moves on to freshwater crayfish in that area. Doesn't have much luck with that either, but geez, that little stream looks pretty beautiful that he's got there. Chris also gives us the insight in this episode that he's doing it for his mental health and his PTS, and he finds the nature connection really helps with that. Chris is sort of, getting pretty fidgety, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to go fishing, and boom, he goes out fishing, and bang, he catches a trout. So, and then straight away, he's like the happiest man alive, and it really is those highs and lows out there. I know Chris has a YouTube channel where he goes diving and collects, crayfish and scallops, and it'd be really interesting to see if this was based on the coast. I think Chris would be very, very talented in that environment. So he must have been pretty upset when they stuck him in on a lake. Then we jump over to Peter. He has the best line, I think, probably in the show, that he's the baddest mother effer in the competition. And all credit to him. I wish I had the kahunas to throw out a line like that. Much respect for Peter. I was talking to him recently, and he said, like, him and I are just complete opposites, but somehow SBS has managed to get a cast that when we hang out, say, and have a beer together or whatever it is, we're friends. And I think that's so beautiful, because apparently SBS's sort of whole charter is to bring people together and to understand different sort of walks of life. And for, this little girl who's upset to kill a possum and Peter's everyday job is to shoot and kill things. It's quite beautiful to sit around a table with Peter and have a good laugh. And then we jump back to me, and I'm fishing, and boom, I caught an eel. And I think there's a line in there like, now what am I going to do with it? It's like, finally I've achieved this goal that I've been working towards for 3 days. And then I'm just like, oh shit, what do I do with it? And you can sort of see me processing that, I've never scun an eel in my life. I watched a YouTube video once. The mind-boggling thing is when that little piece of information comes up at the bottom, whatever it is like, Kate is the first person to secure protein. And to be honest, I just, you have no reference to how you're doing out there. Absolutely none. And I honestly thought I was failing. At that point, I was like, God, I've been fishing for a couple of days and not getting anything, getting snags. And I was just like, whoa, what am I going to do? It just sort of really highlights that lack of input and what that can do to your own thought processes. Even when you're having a conversation with someone, you get a smile or you get a nod and you're like, okay, yep, they're understanding there. You get that small amount of feedback, and out there you're not getting any feedback. And I found that really hard. I'm doing this crazy survival challenge that I've never done before on that level. I'm trying to film it for this television show. So you're doing these two really intense things at the same time and not getting any feedback. All right, and then this is the controversial moment where I choose to stew my eel. I've got a lot of backlash on social media about stewing the eel, and I've, set the eel movement back 20 years. My grandma even sent me a screenshot of an eel cookbook, and and obviously there is absolutely better ways to enjoy eel, but I chose to stew whatever I caught because I wanted to capture every single drop of fat. I didn't want to have it, say, cooking on the coals and the fat dropping into my fire. To be honest, it probably would have happened if it was a fish, whatever it was. I'm a bit sensitive when it comes to strong flavors, so sorry about that, team. When I watch that scene again, I just tear up with like laughter of like me trying to coach myself through eating this thing is like, it's okay. Mind over matter. And I'm just like, I honestly don't remember retching that much. I thought it only happened like once or twice, but clearly it happened a fair few times, and I think all of those made the cut. I'm very sorry to anyone that was eating their dinner at the same time, but I think, you kind of have to be eating dinner when you're watching alone. It makes the viewing pleasure so much more enjoyable. Sitting there with a burger, watching people starve is just the absolute way that alone should be watched. Then we meet Dwayne, and it's so lovely to meet Dwayne. We shoot down to his site, and he looks like he's got some sort of nice sort of rocks there at his beach, and it looks like a kind of a good site. So that's pretty exciting for me to see, and I can't wait to see how he utilizes that. And then we see poor Dwayne, he gets into the millipedes. But I think he's done the right thing there. Like he's being creative, and that's what you need to be in that environment. I've seen some sort of shots in the promo. It looks like he has a very good cabin. So I'm excited to see him build that. At the moment, he's sitting there in sort of this bit of a sad sort of shelter on the edge of the lake, and he's using his axe, to prop up his shelter. I love how Dwayne speaks about being an Aboriginal man and how he's hoping this experience deepens his connection to country, and I'm excited to watch his journey, and we get that flashback to his beautiful little family, and they're living in a caravan while they do a renovation. You're just like, oh God. Then we flick to Mike, and he says something along the lines of, it's absolute bastard of a place to fish. And I couldn't have summed it up better myself. The snags, the dead trees, you lose hooks as soon as you throw them out there. It's lucky if you don't lose a hook, let alone catch a fish is the next level again. Love that little bit of flat land that he's got there to work with. It looks like quite a great little site. Then we flash back to Peter, and I thought this was a beautiful moment where he's showcasing how hard it is to walk around in that environment. And Peter just sort of starts to get angrier and angrier, and then cue the scary music, and boom, he takes a fall, hurts his knee, and I think that's just it unravels from there, the poor guy. It's really sad to see him go, because I feel like given a different scenario, a different situation, Peter could have really excelled. And, perhaps say on the US show where you could use bow hunting and things like that, he would have been a real contender. And I love that shot of him in the tent just before he chooses to leave. It's just that honest, raw Peter in that moment where he realizes I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. There's nothing else I can do. It's time to leave. And I think he takes that decision in a way that he can be proud of. Episode 4 is coming out pretty soon, and will we get to see the mystery man Michael? I sat next to Michael in boot camp, so I'm really excited to see what he gets up to and understand what his experience was like, because it's just this mystery. We don't get to know until you got to know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you for episode 4.